Links here. So I'm going to start off. We've been following Zoom for a couple months. Zoom has there was a big brouhaha because the government of China asked Zoom to get rid of accounts that were doing a China protest about Tiananmen Square. Only the problem is that some of those accounts were outside the country of China, and Zoom got rid of all of them, acceding to the Chinese government's request. That caused a big upset. The internet got very unhappy with Zoom. And so Zoom went back and reinstated all of those accounts that were not inside China, because after all, the government of China should not be allowed, at least many of us think, to end Zoom accounts in countries that are not China. So there's that. The other thing that came out last month, I gave Zoom some good kudos, some gold stars, because they had started up with encryption, full encryption. However, they do not encrypt free accounts. So if you are if you're using a Zoom free account and you're discussing your financial future or your child's financial future with, somebody on a Zoom account, and it's a free account, you might not want to divulge any financial details or anything else that you might not want people to overhear. They do encrypt the paid for accounts. So there you go. And as a matter of fact, the third one, Zoom encryption gets kudos. So the encryption they are doing has been blessed by the Security Now podcast. So people know that. Going along in the world of security, there is something called a call stranger UPnP, or I've forgotten the first word, plug and play, unlimited plug and play. It's probably not unlimited, but anyway. The UPnP is a protocol in our routers, and there's this vulnerability called call stranger. It will be a long time before any updates get fully implemented, because this is a protocol that's in your router. In terms of with respect to us, actual users that are home users, it's probably not much of a problem inside your internet. But if UPnP is blessed or open on the outside, on the wide area network, the WAN, that can be a problem, because it can allow people to take it over and use it for botnets and bad things. So you would be being a bad citizen. If you have the expertise to check your routers and see what is and is not enabled. If you don't, you might want to give your ISP, especially if you get your router from your ISP, give them a call and ask them to help you go through that. That's worth doing. There is also a Bluetooth vulnerability out there that does affect Macs and iOS. The good thing about it is somebody has to be standing within Bluetooth range in order to make use of the vulnerability. And in these days of social distance, if we're staying 6 feet away from everybody, that's not going to be a problem. If you're in a situation, if you are in this world traveling, let's say over a border, you might want to turn Bluetooth off, or if you're in a situation where you're somehow you go to one of the demonstrations or whatever, but you're in some situation where you're close to other people and you're concerned about the possibility of somebody getting into your Bluetooth. Problem at a Trump rally. He says, yes, it would be. So if you're going to a Trump rally, you might want to turn Bluetooth off as well as wear a mask, but that's up to you. So the other big story that's been going on for a while, and this has been going back and forth, Google and Apple joined up together to develop an API, application interface, so that countries or states for that matter could develop apps to help with contact tracing with respect to COVID. Some countries have decided they don't like big tech, so therefore they're not going to use this API. One of those countries was Singapore. They developed their own, and then of course, lo and behold, it doesn't work on iOS because it isn't blessed by Apple. So there seems to be a problem or a lot of misunderstanding. The other thing is that the API that Google and Apple co-developed does not allow governments to gather the information. Nobody gathers the information. It remains anonymous so that you can contact trace, but you can't trace it back to the specific John Smith who lives at 343 Maple Street. Instead, it allows them to do contract tracing in another way that doesn't specify the specific individual. A lot of governments don't like that. They've decided they want the data, and I believe the last time I heard, the UK is one of those, and they have decided that what they want to do is they want to develop their own, and I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. I don't know if they're going to be able to develop one that actually works, but nonetheless, they want one so that they can keep all the data on a server. That's not what Google and Apple think is a good idea. So
interesting.
Yeah. So it's a big brouhaha. There's a lot of articles out there. I have this one link, but there's a lot of articles that are going back and forth. This country's doing this. No, that Ireland has changed its mind. No, the UK has changed its mind. No, France is going to do this. So there's a lot of reporting on it, if you have the interest. But the deal is that Google and Apple want to protect people's privacy, but still allow the tracing. And they've come up with a way that they believe does that. And some countries are balking and other countries are going great and just jumping right in. Crooks exploit Black Lives Matter. This might not matter to you. This might not be important to you. Pardon me, but I'm going to hit this link because it's an interesting, what they've done is pretty interesting. So they come up with subject lines like, give your feedback anonymously about Black Lives Matter, leave a review nameless about blah, 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 speak out confidently about whose lives matter. So it's to draw people in regardless of which side of any issue they may be on. There's examples of the email's first line. Give your opinion about whose lives matter. Tell your government your opinion about Black Lives Matter, etc. And then they have, in order to do this, of course, you have to download an attachment. Guess what's in the attachment? It's bad things. So example of attachment file names, eVote form, such and such, .doc. Now, this, unless you're running Windows, which most of us don't do, this won't apply to us. You have to have Windows and the Office app, and I believe the Office app even has to be open in order for you to get infected with anything from this. But you may trust, just because they've started with Windows, which is normal, we're used to that, they probably are going to come back with something for the Mac. So be aware when you see something like this. I mean, it sounds very neutral. It sounds like, if you're believe one thing or you believe another thing. Yeah. So anyway, you get the idea. So I'm going to pop that down. Moving right along. Grayshift, our friends at Grayshift, you may remember that Grayshift is a company that offers, presumably only to law enforcement, a box, a hardware that is supposed to allow people, only law enforcement, to break into iPhones. And they have used over the years a variety of different vulnerabilities to do that. They now have something that is supposed to be a secret passcode keylogger. So what happens, let's assume that it is in fact law enforcement. So what happens is, let's say this person is arrested, and as part of the arrest, the arresting officers take the individual's phone away from them, and then they hand it back to them and say, oh, well, you can go ahead and call your lawyer, or you can go ahead and call your family to post bond or whatever. And then when the person puts what they've done is when they've had the phone in their possession is they've attached it to one of these gray shift boxes that has put some kind of keylogger on it. And then when the person goes to call their lawyer or whatever, they type in their passcode, and then that passcode gets logged. And then the cops say, okay, you have to give us the phone back. And then they're able to get into everything in the phone. It's not clear. Well, there's a couple things that aren't clear. It's not clear whether or not that would be considered unreasonable search and seizure, whether or not it's constitutional on that basis, whether or not they have to have a warrant, et cetera, et cetera. But from a technical point of view, presumably they have the ability to do that. The other caveat on this story is what we don't know whether that includes the latest iPhones. We don't know if it just is like iPhone 6 and 7 and 8, and it doesn't apply to iPhone 10, 11, whatever. We don't know. So, but it's out, or nor do we know if it, is only if you're using iOS 12. So we don't know. There's a lot of stuff we don't know about it. But be aware that that's out there. I don't think most of our folks are out there being arrested, but just so you know. Twitter discloses and takes down accounts from China, Russia, and Turkey. These are accounts that were designed to tell Americans this, that, or the other about who they think is a good candidate for president or Senate or whatever. These are mostly designed to mess with our election, and Twitter has taken them down. They're doing their best, but be aware that that stuff, if you use Twitter or for that matter, Facebook or anything else, be aware that various governments would like you to vote one way or the other in our upcoming election. There are critical updates for Microsoft Windows and Adobe Flash. If you use either of those, the most recent Patch Tuesday included critical updates. So please patch your machines. Also, Firefox evidently came out with an update fairly recently. And as a reminder, the people that I listened to were basically saying, oh, I get the updates automatically, but in order to activate the updates, you have to quit the browser and restart it. So if you're using Firefox, make sure you do that every now and then. Okay, there's a health app. I don't remember the name of it, so let's go there. Okay, Babylon mobile health app mixes up patient consultation videos. So they record the video interaction between you and your doctor. And then when you go to look at it, I, Linda, might get the video that belongs to John Smith down the street. So I watch the interaction between John and his doctor. And perhaps he's watching the interaction between me and my doctor. So that's not good. It doesn't do much for our privacy. Don't know if anybody uses that app, but be aware that there was a mix-up there. I believe they have corrected that, but be aware that happened. So there's that. That's it on security. On legal, political, financial, I guess some of the stuff before was sort of political, but anyway, Apple stock reaches new heights. It's been going up and up and up. It has been down a little bit. It's down a little bit from those highs, but the stock has been doing well in spite of this crazy economy and situation that we're in. Moving on to general news. Apple Music supports Black Lives Matter. They had a day where if you went to the music app, I believe it just showed a lot of music from specific Black artists, but you still could play whatever you wanted to play, but it did feature those artists. Apple, I already mentioned the Apple-Google API for the COVID contact tracing that was released also in the time span since we last met. But as I mentioned, some countries are using it, some are not. We'll see what happens. If you're interested, the API explained, this is an article that will go through the details if you want to know, if you're interested in what they're up to. What is allowed for those apps and what's not. Apple reopens 100 plus stores. That's in the US. They've opened stores all over the country, reopened them all over the country. However, They are, I believe, taking temperatures at the door. You have to wear a mask if you go in, practice social distancing while you're there, and they're wiping the stores down. They're being very cautious, so which is as it should be, I think. Tim Cook gave a statement on the Black Lives Matter. It's actually very moving. I'm not going to go through it, but the link is there. And if this issue matters to you, it's worth reading his statement. Apple fixes a pricing error for RAM on the 13-inch MacBook Pro. What happened is that they were charging only $100 to double the RAM. And that was a typo. It should have been, I think, $200. So if you bought a 13-inch MacBook Pro during that time and added RAM, you got your RAM at a bargain. Because Apple's not going to come back and tell you that you owe them another $100, but they have fixed that pricing error. So you're out of luck if you wanted that one. The Apple Card through Goldman Sachs is still offering deferred payments. So what they started doing from the beginning of the lockdown is they said, if you cannot make your payment, apply for the ability to defer your payment. And then what will happen is that, we'll bless it and say, okay, you don't have to pay your bill over for the next month. The only caveat on it is you have to apply each month. You have to renew. So, but they have done it. I believe this is the third month running that they've offered that ability, and they're letting people postpone their payments. Apple nagging about updating Catalina. So I can show you that easily because this machine is running Mojave. So what they mean by that is, I don't know, can you guys see my doc?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Here's system preferences. Actually, I'll open it up just to show you. But there's a little red dot. See this little red dot? It says I haven't done my update to Catalina. That's why that's there. I am happily ignoring it because I have my own reasons, some apps that I'm not quite ready to play around with that are 32-bit, and so I don't want to move to Catalina. So it used to be that you could make that little red dot go away, and Apple has removed your ability to make the little red dot go away. So it is still there. So there you have that. Let's see, what else? Lynn, bugs. I think this one is intentional, Lynn. I don't think it's a bug. Let's see, update. So they're nagging. Apple increases its lead in the wearables market. They're doing very well. They have close to 30% ahead of everybody else in wearables, and in wearables includes the watch and earpods and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anything you can wear. This is just a link to an iPhone tip about using Do Not Disturb. If you use Do Not Disturb on your iOS devices, I do. But if you use that, there are ways so that people who are important to you can get through, even if you have Do Not Disturb on. I have mine set up so that my father-in-law, if he calls, and I have Do Not Disturb on, he would ring through, as would my husband. So that's just a tip on how to do that. And WWDC is next week. Keynote is Monday. That will be live broadcast if you want to watch it, which I almost certainly will do. So there's that. Okay, on updates, we're moving on. No, we're right about on time. That's good. For updates, jailbreaks, there was a jailbreak that included a jailbreak that was made possible by a kernel vulnerability that was fixed in 13.5.1. For what it's worth, they unsigned 13.5. So once people had upgraded here, they removed the digital signature, I should say it that way, so that people could not go back to 13.5. Also, iOS is up 12. If for some reason one is running 12.4.7. iPadOS 13.5.1, watchOS, Catalina, Mojave, High Sierra security update is there, tvOS and HomePod. So all of those came through since the last time we met. And on rumors, the rumors are flying because we're so close to WWDC. I'm going to push through on this one because this is kind of funny. Watch this picture. Look at the glasses. They're like Steve's old glasses. So Apple plans a pair of Steve Jobs Heritage Edition AR glasses. So that's the rumor. We'll see what happens. Apple Car, that's back in the news. One of the analysts that I think is really good, says, "Oh yeah, Apple's still working on the Apple Car, and they're going to do she said a vertical integration because they will want complete." So I don't know what that means, but anyway, it's out there as a rumor. ARM Macs, so Macs based on the ARM chips, the same kind of chips that run our iPhones and iPads. That would be Apple developed. So that's rumor is out there. One rumor I've heard on that is that will be announced at WWDC. We will see. And then there's been a lot of rumors back and forth about whether or not iPhone 12 is coming, quote, late because of COVID. And the, wait a minute, I just got a chat there and I missed it from somebody. Can you put that back up again? Let's see if I can get it. Let's go to chat, see if I have it. Can you make the news outline larger? Oh, Lynn, I'm so sorry. All right. So I just saw that. So I didn't do a very good job of making that larger. Oh, I know why. All right. We'll do it for next time. But anyway, it will be available to you to take a look at on the website afterwards. If there's particular ones of these you want to go back through, it's there. We've got Chuck. This is Chuck Joyner, everybody.
Hey.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, well, thank you for having me. I am also I'm learning to use WebEx as a presenter. I have not been doing this in spite of all the lockdown time. Most of the time, I'm not the one creating things, and if I do, we've been using Zoom, and that's something we can talk about. I heard Linda talk about some of the security issues, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But when she asked me for a topic, I thought, something is near and dear to me right at the moment, and it's almost becoming kind of a passion of mine, is the technology and what this has done for us to be in lockdown. Because from where I sit, my office with about 2 days notice went on lockdown on March 18th, and we haven't been back yet. And right now it looks like we won't be going back until sometime around the 1st of July. And so it's been a complete change in the way that we work. I work in the insurance business, in claims and operations. So I'm one of the very lucky ones that my job, A, could continue, and B, could be done from home with almost no change in responsibility. And frankly, I've kind of found that I like it. Now, I'm quick to tell you that I live at home alone, and I don't have kids, dogs, or anything else. The lawnmower outside is my biggest challenge. So, it has been great for me. I know some of my coworkers that have kids and family at home and spouse at home and all that. That's a little bit different. But what I think this has done is it has caused us to all experiment and explore and examine what we do and how we do it. And not just for businesses, but also for, groups like yours, social groups and computer user groups and, music groups and everyone, to find new ways to communicate, to maybe do things that they were thinking about but never seemed to get around to. And now all of a sudden we had plenty of time to do it. And so being a bit of a hardware junkie, I wanted to start out with some of that, and then we'll get into some of the other things that go along with this. The one sort of bad thing here that I only have a little postage stamp video of myself to see what you're seeing. So I'm going to slide away for a second and let you see, because where I am now on this side of the room is where I do the recordings for Mac Voices and most of the audio video work. Over on that side of the room is like the main area where my work area is for the day job. So I'm going to slide away and just let you take a quick look over there, even though the background's a little bit blurred. And what you should be able to see is, and I've left the screensavers up, but you should be able to see 3 different screens. My MacBook 16-inch Pro, and then 2, I guess they're about 25, 27-inch monitors, excuse me, that I've been using. And I have to tell you, I had one 27-inch back there before, and honestly, sometimes I would come home and plug everything in, and I'd turn it on. Sometimes I wouldn't bother, and I was making a huge mistake. And when I came home, pardon me, let me back up a minute. It's long been my contention that we're not going to be able to go paperless until our desks are the size of our screens. Our screens are the size of our desks, because if you work the way I do, and I think people still do, you scatter papers out, you have different stacks for things. You might be referencing one document over here while you're trying to reference another one over here, and then you're working on one right here. And so I hooked up 2 27 inches plus my 16-inch, and it just changed my life. Now, Apple did an interesting little thing here. I don't even know when. I've lost track. And I don't know. And I can see some of you here on the screen. So how many of you have explored using Spaces, the Spaces feature in Catalina? Okay, I see 2 hands of the people. Oh, a couple more. And I like it, but it still feels just a little cumbersome to me. And this is like Spaces, only physical Spaces, because I can have one monitor dedicated to one project, another monitor dedicated to another project, and another monitor dedicated to a third project. Or I can be doing things in between. And obviously, email and online communications are a big piece of working at home. So usually that's what I have down front and center, with the other things up on either screen. And if that sounds like it's really extravagant and I'm spending a ridiculous amount of money, no. I mean, if you're going to go out and buy a 4K screen, and you're going to try to buy screens that you would probably want to watch video on or movies on, yeah, then you're going to spend some money. But you can, for $100, 110, $15, you can buy a very nice 1080p monitor from somebody like ViewSonic or God help us, Dell. They make decent monitors. Even some of the no-name monitors are not bad. Samsung, of course, is another good one. And they give you this working space that you need, and I think has become so valuable and so important to me. Because that way, again, if I have a video conference up like here now, right now I'm on an iMac 5K, and I do not have a second monitor for this. And actually, I wish I did, because what I just discovered is if I go to full screen on Zoom, on WebEx, I wipe out my notes. And there's no way to have my notes come back to the front. So I'm kind of stuck. So I can't do that. But if I had a second screen, I could slide it over and have those there. So if you are really interested in serious productivity, get all the monitors and all the screen space you can, because it really does make a big difference. You might ask, now, how am I hooking up all those monitors along with everything else I want to hook up? And that's why and some of this equipment I had before, some I brought with me from the office, and some I've just repurposed in. But an OWC Thunderbolt dock does an amazing job of letting me connect up to 2 4K monitors to a MacBook Pro 16-inch. Now, again, I just have the 1080p's because I didn't want to spend that kind of money. But if I wanted even more, usable screen real estate, I could easily get those 2 4K monitors and not have to go and do anything other than what I'm doing now. So I'm not getting quite the value out of that dock that I could, but I also didn't want to spend the money for those extra monitors, not knowing how long we were going to be here. Frankly, if I'd have known how long I was going to be working at home, I might have turned one of those monitors into a 4K. Another important thing at home, and again, I've have them for different reasons, but is something that will give you good, solid backup of whatever you're working on. And I know that you, like about everybody else that I run into, is so sick of hearing about backup. But now it's become even more important, because now it's not just my stuff, it's the stuff I do for work and for the office. And that means, not only do I need to back my stuff up? I want to back their stuff up as well. If they've been smart, and happily our office was, we had online storage already in place so that if any of us were accessing files, we were pulling them off of that central server and then putting them back to that central server, and we didn't have to worry about local backup. But there are still projects that I'm doing that I'm not pulling. I either have the assets locally or need or want the assets locally to work on and don't want to have to be waiting for them to come up or down from the server. So I wanted something that, that is speedy, but also very secure. And I always recommend Drobo. Now, to be fair, I know some people have had negative experiences with Drobo. They had a downtime a few years ago, and that left a bad taste in some people's mouths. But I've never lost anything on a Drobo, and I have had some issues, and their tech support was always great, and everything has always come back. And so I would encourage you something like that. If not, then go and buy 2 different hard drives and save things to at least those 2 locations. One of them maybe you can set up as a time machine drive to have that option because that's something that Apple built in. I also like Backblaze as an online backup service because, again, I want all my stuff backed up and I want it backed up multiple places in case something goes wrong. And of course, with something like Backblaze, Time Machine, also you have versioning. So if I make a mistake on something I'm working on this afternoon and realize I really would love to be able to go back to yesterday afternoon when everything was still right before I messed it up, I can do that. I can step back in time with any of those services and get that earlier version of that document and then go from there. Online storage, Dropbox has its praisers and its detractors. I still think it's a pretty solid option. Depending on who you're working for, they may or may not feel that way. And of course, we all have iCloud. Depending on how much storage you want or need and are willing to pay for, Apple will give you a very generous allotment of iCloud storage at, frankly, a pretty reasonable price. And so we're back to the privacy thing. I'm comfortable with Dropbox for most things. If I really want something private, I'm probably going to put it in iCloud because I just feel much more secure with what Apple does. Okay, so this is me, and I had these, and I really hadn't. I was using them, but not quite the same way, and certainly for not as many hours a day as I am. Where's my image? But you may be able to see right above my thumb where there's one white speaker, and there's another one on the other side. And those are a set of audio engine speakers that I got to do reviews on, and I love them and didn't want to let them go. And now they are one of my most essential pieces of work equipment because I find that working at home, even though I like not being distracted, there are still distractions around. I hear something going on outside and I want to get up and see what's going on outside. And that just obviously kills your productivity. So if I put on some music from Apple Music, I prefer something instrumental. I usually prefer something a lot heavier than most people. So I like some of the shred guitarists to put on because it's very energetic music. It sounds really good loud and it blocks out everything and I can concentrate. And so while that might be overkill for you, I would definitely tell you if you're setting up a workstation at home that you're going to spend any significant amount of time at, by all means, include a decent set of speakers, budget for that. Home pods obviously would work just as well, but my home pods are in the living room. So, and I don't know how you feel about that. You may prefer total silence, and it doesn't matter what kind of music. If it just fills in the background, it's better than something that you have to concentrate on. Having a TV on is great, but a TV will inevitably distract you. But if you have music on, then it just fills in the background and doesn't distract you. If you want to get really extravagant, or you may already have some of this and you just put it to use. But again, if I slide over and you won't be able to see it quite as easily, but I have an iPad Pro sitting back there on one side and a second laptop on the other. So I have 2 screens up here, 1 screen in the middle, and then 2 smaller screens on either side. Now that really sounds like overkill. And what could I possibly want to do with all of those screens? Well, what I've discovered is that if I'm on a video conference where I'm just an attendee, where I'm don't have to have my camera on, maybe they don't even give me the option to have my camera on, and somebody's just talking. The best thing I can do is open that on either the iPad Pro or the second MacBook Pro, and just let it play there. And that way I can be taking notes. I can, between us, I can be multitasking just a little bit, because I feel like, not every video conference or audio conference that I attend really demands my 100% attention to be staring at the camera. And that's another, well, we'll save that for cameras. But yeah, you find that the more screens you have, the more that you will use them. And we'll talk here a little bit as we get farther down in the list of some of the other things that I use them for. How am I doing? Everybody good with me? And by the way, I should have said, if anybody has, yes, Synology is another good choice. Thank you, Linda. The chat is annoyingly down here below where my eye level is. So if anybody wants anything, if you're on camera, just wave furiously or chat, and Linda, you interrupt and tell me there's a question or comment, or somebody wants to tell me I'm crazy.
You can you can put the tear off the chat and participants menus and put them on your other screen.
I can tear off the chat menu?
Yes, if you go up to the icons in the top right corner, and one of the choices is the rightmost icon allows you to go to floating panel view, or not, and
floating panel view. Yeah, floating panel view was the one that blocked out my notes.
Well, that happened to me too. But if you then go, that's because you're in full screen mode. So if you go out of full screen mode, right, you still are taking up the whole screen, but then it won't blank out both monitors. I had that same problem, even though my setup is with screens having separate spaces. So it's, does that make sense?
It's not working for me right now,
okay.
And I'm not gonna waste time trying to do that. But
sorry.
Yeah, but and so okay, this is a little bit out of order, but let's do this. This is something that we all are going to have to get better at, and are going to need to do. As I said before, we've been using at my office Zoom. In fact, we were using Zoom long before the lockdown occurred, and there are a couple of funny things about that. People were using it, but people were using it for audio conferencing. We'd beg them to turn on their cameras. Please turn on your cameras. It makes everybody feel more engaged, and they wouldn't. Now all of a sudden, people are turning on their cameras with abandon and have no problem. And sometimes you know that they are in their pajamas, even though they tell you they're not. They are in their pajamas, but they're still turning on their cameras, which is good, except for some pajamas. So, but that's been a really good thing. But this is a new literacy that we're all going to have to learn. We have options like WebEx, which we can talk about. Why I like Zoom in a minute. But you have WebEx, you have Zoom, you have, God help me, Skype, which has certain advantages, certain very big disadvantages. Microsoft Teams started to. Anybody here from Microsoft? No. Okay, then I can say what I think. They started to steal features from Teams because they saw how popular Teams was, and now they would have you think that the world runs on Microsoft Teams. Not quite sure it is. Definitely getting popular, and it's definitely better than nothing. And that sort of brings me to why Zoom, I think, has become so popular. If you go to Zoom, and by the way, I understand that you all can't. And, we're all subject to corporate governance. And so I know that you can't use Zoom where you are, and it makes perfect sense, and I understand it because of the security concerns. But you look at the interface here and you look at the Zoom interface, and the Zoom interface is so much easier to understand. It's so uncluttered. It's got that, as we have a little bit here, but it's sort of, its basis is either one speaker view or the Brady Bunch view, with, where you get to see a whole lot of people. And I think that's one of the big things that has done it, that has made it so popular. It's so approachable. They offer a free version that lets you get on so you don't have to pay for it unless you need those extra features. And it just, I mean, think about back to when the lockdown started. It's amazing Zoom has survived and held up, because everybody was saying, well, we'll just meet by Zoom. And that means everybody in my industry, everybody in any industries that you all are associated with, were piling in. The education industry was piling into Zoom. So just think about everything from kindergartens the whole way up through colleges. We're saying, yeah, we'll just get on Zoom and do it. And Zoom, I mean, somebody had to be quaking in their boots trying to figure out how they were going to manage all this. But they've done a pretty admirable job. They've made some compromises on things, but I've only had one issue when anyone had a problem with a Zoom call. And frankly, that one occurred, let's see, earlier today. And that was because the gentleman I was interviewing was so far out in the sticks that he barely had connectivity. Other than that, Zoom has been pretty bulletproof for me. The other thing that Zoom did is the virtual backgrounds. And this one was a huge surprise to me, because business people that I knew would never take the time or never consider anything humorous like that. They'd come onto a Zoom call and they're sitting in a jail, or they're sitting in a sports stadium, or they're sitting, God knows where. And so you comment on it and they're happy to tell you how they went and found this image and why they love it so much. They think it's so humorous and so much fun. And it was, and I was not a big virtual background person before, but what I discovered is this is a great icebreaker for this new kind of communication. That, if you can put up something that, if you're a Boston Red Sox fan and you can put up Fenway Park, man, I mean, that's your identity right there. And it immediately causes a discussion with New York Yankees fans. So, there's this interesting thing that happens. And at the risk of plugging a Mac Voices show, I just did one Friday with a gentleman who produces something called Screen Badge. Now, I did not have a chance, because it was just released, to create it, and I couldn't use it here on WebEx anyway. But what Screen Badge does is, well, okay, so let me start over. Business cards, I'm not sure, are going to be a complete thing of the past, but in the business world, you're going to be a lot more reluctant, I think, to hand out or to receive business cards, since we're not supposed to be touching each other, let alone anything else. Screen Badge will let you create a QR code that with your business contact information, and then imprint it on a background of your choosing, so that you can use it with Zoom or Skype or anything that will support a virtual background. And you now will have, where's my image? There. You will now have a little QR code sitting up here that anyone can scan with their phone. And it gives them your business card information, which then they can save directly into their contacts. I mean, this was, as far as I'm concerned, this is brilliant, because now not only do we get away from the business card scanning, which is always a hassle, because there's always some business card designer who thinks that dark gray text on a black background looks really sophisticated and you can't read it with your eyes, let alone with a scanner. But this is just information being taken with your iPhone camera, sucked into your phone, and then dropped into contacts if you so desire. And that's the kind of innovation I think we're going to see here, because now you have another way to do something. So if I call Linda and say, hey, Linda, I'm selling, hardware of some kind, and I'd love for you to check it out. Well, I can put that QR code up there, and the way Screen Badge works, it could be my business card, or it could be a link to a whole nother set of information on the web that I want to have her to look over. So instead of doing the email thing or the or the URL thing in chat, she can just pick up her phone and hit the button right there and pull that QR code in, or take a screenshot of it for later. So many different things that can be done here. But I do think that we're all going to have to, and I'm a little embarrassed that I haven't had more experience with WebEx because I'm having to learn here just like you are. But right now there's so many competing services, and I'm sure you've seen the articles out there about there have to be 2 or 3 dozen different ones that have different capabilities. Some of them appear to be clones of other things. I believe it's Ring Central, the virtual phone company that has a white label version of Zoom that they offer to their subscribers as a value add. So it doesn't have all the Zoom features, but it's got it. I mentioned Microsoft Teams. Yeah, Microsoft Teams has some interesting features, but they too are kind of working their way and getting video up and running in there. They've had Skype. They have royally screwed Skype up because you would have thought that with the years that I mean, they had a video conferencing service that worked great, and they chose to go in and Microsoft defy it and messed it up. And ask anybody that records podcasts with it, and they'll tell you how frustrated we all have been and have looked for other solutions because they keep moving things. They keep changing the interface and moving things. And we all believe in advancements, but that kind of consistency is really important for folks. And when it comes to the business folks, it's even more important because they're not geeks like we are. They want to be able to learn something and use it for a while until something honest to God better comes along, not just because some designer thought it should be could be better. So they really lost out, and Zoom won big in that war. WebEx, I see David Oster. I think I see your head shaking. Thank you. Yes, I see an agreement. That's good. But WebEx, WebEx is good, but WebEx is a little cluttered with an interface. GoToMeeting is kind of the same way. Not bad. Certainly some capabilities that even Zoom doesn't have, but it still is not the friendliest thing in the world to do. Now, again, I heard Linda talking about some of the security issues Zoom has had, and I feel obligated to say that, yeah, they've had those issues. But after a couple missteps, they've been very quick to come out and say, when something new arises, they jump up and say, yep, sorry about that. And then they fix it, and they fix it pretty darn promptly. So they've become, I think, a better company because of some of those problems. You can argue that they were taking shortcuts before. Maybe so. Or maybe somebody just never really looked at it. And certainly no one ever looked at any of this stuff like the magnifying glass that we're under because of the lockdown. So sorry, that's my ranting on screen sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Another important thing for working at home, and this is why I have all the screens that I do, especially the smaller ones, is everybody seems to have their own favorite way of communicating with their team, whether it's email, whether it's Microsoft Teams, whether it's Slack, maybe it's just plain old messages from iPhone or FaceTime, but they're almost, it's an embarrassment of riches out there, and trying to get everyone to standardize on one is really, really difficult. Do we have any millennials here? Oh, I don't see any. Okay, so the millennials love, and I'm not putting millennials down, but the millennials work off their phones. I swear, I think they would rather have a phone than a laptop or an iPad. And if they're the right millennials, they're super effective at it. So I can't argue with that. But that means that they are favoring chat or something like chat in whatever interface they can get it on their phone. Some of us prefer something a little more like Messages or Slack, where you have a few more features and a little more sophistication and definitely more screen real estate. And so there are no easy answers here or right answers. It's just what do you and your team want? But it also helps to be able for me to have one screen or dedicated to one or two communication channels, so that if somebody needs something right then, it's not a lot different than me looking across the way and saying, "Hey, David, what do you think about this?" as opposed to having to schedule a teleconference or pick up even the phone and call them. I can just do it in chat. And so instead of going through all the pleasantries of, yeah, how's your day going? And, well, my day's going okay. And, have this problem or that problem. No, you just get your answer and keep on going. What else? So webcam. Of course, I have a number of webcams around here for Mac Voices, but that is something that clearly some people definitely need to invest in, because the webcams on the computers are not that great. They usually are 15 frame per second cameras, and they're okay. But if you want to have a professional appearance on some of these conferences, you need a better camera. Now, right now, I don't know if any of you've gone shopping for webcams recently, but you literally cannot buy webcams. Everybody is sold out of webcams. Even the really expensive ones are pretty darn expensive again and not available. So that's going to be something to put on the shopping list for when all this calms down and they get back. In the meantime, though, there's an app called Webcam Settings that you can use that will give you a bit more control over your webcam. And sometimes the webcams come with their own software, and that depends on the webcam. But Webcam Settings works with pretty much anything, and it will allow you to control some of the backlight. It'll allow you to change the temperature of the image and make it adjust a little bit more, adjust a little easier than what you might have. Here, I've got 2 LED light panels for Mac Voices. So I've got this one. I really want to do great video conferencing, but if it's just a casual conference, I'm just doing it back there with my setup with another Logitech webcam. Microphones are another thing to consider if you have a lot of noise or want to sound a little better, and if you have an echoey room. I have a blue Yeti sitting over there that I've been using for that, which is pretty obviously overkill. But I had it here, and I figured why not. There's also a little light ring over there on my webcam. You can buy these light sources really cheap. You can buy some expensive ones, or you can buy just little no-name LEDs off of Amazon and improve your image greatly. So that's another thing that if you're going to be doing this for any length of time, or you really care about it, that's another good investment to make. And that particular one is pretty small.
Light ring.
I heard somebody. I see a thumb, and
Oh, that would be me. I was just asking how big that light ring is on your webcam.
about that big. And yeah. I'm probably just blowing the image right out, and that's the low setting, so I can kick it up a couple more. So if I put that over here, I mean, I've got more than enough light. That's the high setting on me. Now, of course, it's being augmented by the others, but and this particular one I think was like $17. So this is the one from Myographer, but there's some no names out there that are just as good. I'll advocate for AirPods, and then I'll say don't use AirPods. Use AirPods for you listening to the video conference calls. I've not had good luck with AirPods with using them to talk through to a video conference. That's why I have the Blue Yeti over there. It seems to be the setup, and I haven't found out exactly what the magic is. Sometimes people with AirPods come on and they sound great. Other times they come on and they sound just terrible. And I don't know what the magic is. So I would say be cautious if you're going to use those for the talking part of a video conference or an audio conference, because there just seems to be something about them and the way they interact with all the services that is hit or miss. But as far as listening to something, if you can put these in your ears, there are a couple things that happen. First of all, even though somebody may not have great audio on the other side, you can hear it a whole lot better if it's right there in your ears. But also it cuts down on any feedback that might happen from them coming through your speakers and then going back to theirs. So that's why I wear these for things like this, as well as for Mac Voices. It cuts way down. A lot of the services do a good job of the echo cancellation, and so you don't have that, but it's still not perfect, and you'll still catch those little spots and sounds more like beeps and burps and everything. And it's like, no, I don't want that. I want this to sound as much like a high quality phone call as I can. So those are some of the things that, you know, I've been doing for lockdown. I find that having the extra hardware, of course, I mean, I'm gathering it up for other reasons, but having it here has been just really terrific, and makes the home working pleasant experience so much more pleasant. And my coworkers, you know, depending on what they have at home, I mean, they don't have this kind of setup, but you know, the ones that do have some extra hardware, they've talked about how great it is. And it seems the people that have a little bit nicer setup at home find it easier to work from home instead of struggling with just, say, a single screen. That's something, it was sort of surprising to me. I don't think I realized how many of the businesses we deal with have gone to having at least 2 screens at every desk. And so one of the big problems when people went home is like, you know, you mean I got to work off just this one laptop screen or this one Chromebook screen? And so a lot of people were buying a lot of monitors very quickly and having them shipped to people's homes, so they at least had that second screen to work with. There's no question that that makes a big difference. That's probably one of my biggest messages, is just get all the screen real estate you can, because it's like hard drives and anything else, like your closet. If you have the space, you will fill it up. You know, you'll find a way to fill it up. But it makes a big difference. Questions, comments at this point about anything? Becky?
Yes. Is my audio on? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. You sound great.
Thank you. A colleague had a good solution for the inability to buy webcams, and he ordered a secondhand cell phone off of eBay for 20 or 30 bucks. And the cameras in cell phones are far superior to what is in our laptops. So he just got a cheap cell phone and rigged it up, and his resolution was fabulous. He doesn't use a chip in it. He doesn't need to connect it to cellular service, but he uses it for Wi-Fi and worked great. So I just offer that as a possible workaround for anybody that might not be able to buy a webcam but needs something.
Yeah, I know of one piece of software that's still under development that is supposed to make this a lot easier. There's right now an application out called Epic Cam or Epic Camera, EPOCH, that will let you do that. I've tried it. I've had limited success with it, but I also know people that have tried it and they swear by it. They say it's just, you know, click, click, and it's done, and they've got themselves a I'm using for this video, for what I do for Mac Voices, I use actually a DSLR that goes plugs in, and so that's why you get the nice bokeh, the nice soft background, and it goes through a little thing from Elgato. The trouble is that the Elgato connector that I use to make it allow it to do this, I think before you could buy them for like 30, 40, 50 bucks. Now you're probably talking about 2 or 3, because they're in that kind of demand that you can't find them. But yeah, if you can get that to work and get the software to a software application to allow the video conferencing services to recognize that phone as a webcam, absolutely, it's a great solution. Next question, comment?
Yeah. You'll notice a number of people on the connection actually have 2 attachments for that very purpose. They've got the big screen going for the video connection, and then they've got a phone or an iPad being used as their audio microphone and earbuds and the like.
Yeah, of course I can't see everybody's setup. I only see, what the camera's seeing, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me a bit, especially with a group like yours where you're located. You all have probably all kind of extra hardware laying around all the time.
Yeah.
You bu- you
And,
bunch of you bunch of geeks.
Hey,
and as are known on the Apple AirBuds,
What?
some of that may have to do with the Bluetooth connections. I have discovered that if I actually try to run my Apple AirBuds through my Mac, the connection is pretty bad. But if I run it through my phone or my pad, it's great. I mean, I'm on my pad at the moment, but I've never detected a difference in quality between this and my phone, and it's worlds better than what my Mac connection offers.
Charles, that's interesting. That might be one of the missing pieces that I haven't been able to determine. But now that I'm thinking about it, some of the biggest problems I've had were with people that were definitely running it through their Mac. So yeah, maybe so. I mean, again, try it. It's going to be one of those things that you'll never know until you try it.
There is quite a variation of graphics processors that are used in each of those devices. So that might have something to do with it. Plus, as you said, the camera is significantly better.
And Robert, I see you're using a green screen, and that's something that I think that's going to be a little bit beyond a lot of folks because green screens can be kind of a hassle to set up and deal with unless you really have just a dedicated place for them. They provide great results, and again, going back to Zoom, I mean, Zoom and Skype both do an amazing job of taking out your background, even if you don't have a green screen. A green screen will make it easier and better. But it's
Yeah.
just one more trick of the video trade.
As we discussed separately earlier, WebEx is not permitting the use of a chroma key or anything like that when you're using the Mac-based version. It does allow it when you're using the iOS-based version, which is kind of interesting. I hope they fix that. But maybe I can do something here that might be a little interesting. I'm going to throw this up. Okay. Can y'all see the mini cam image that I've thrown up?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what a green screen would let you do.
wow.
So you can see that I'm sitting there in my massive library here at
Pretty good. Pretty
my
good.
abode, yes.
Very good.
And that's particularly interesting, Robert, since looking at your regular image, that your lighting is, and this is not a criticism, obviously, but your lighting is just a little uneven, and you've got folds in the green in the cloth, and yet
Yeah.
the key is really good.
Yeah, I didn't bother trying to iron the cloth or steam it or anything. And yeah, my lighting is a little off because I'm just using my regular iMac Pro cam for this, and there's no way for me to set up kind of a front lighting for it. So it is what it is.
As soon as we started talking about virtual backgrounds and video conferencing, look how much everybody jumped in. I mean, everybody's enthused about this. This is new. Everybody wants to say, yeah, I like this feature, or well, this one is better than that. And that is so cool because it solves so many problems with getting people together. If somebody doesn't want to leave the house, then by all means, they can still join in virtually. If they can't leave the house, it's even more important. So, I applaud you guys. There are groups out there, and I'm sure you've seen, that have up on their website, we've suspended operations until COVID-19 is over, as if any of us have any idea when it'll be over. Plenty of other groups have done just what you do. They're playing with some of the technology. They're making it part of their meetings. They're educating their members, and they're keeping the group together and going and spreading information. And I think it's great. And I congratulate you and the folks who lead the group and the folks here who are bothering to participate, because we're right back to it. It's one thing that you have to do it. You have to learn it, and you're going to make some mistakes, but you're not going to break it, and you're doing it, and that's great. Congratulations.
Good.
Very good.
All right. I will add on to just to toss in the comment. What I hear a lot and what I myself am using is FaceTime for like one or two people. And I hear that all the time. People say Zoom, or on all the podcasts they'll say Zoom or FaceTime, Zoom or FaceTime. So FaceTime is getting that mention and that use. So on that last note, we need to move back to Robert and Charles, for questions?
Okay, Charles, would you like to be the presenter?
I can do that.
Hey, and
All right.
before you, I'm going to say goodnight because it's late here and I've got to go to work tomorrow. So
Okay.
Yeah.
thanks
good
again.
Thank you very
Goodbye.
much, Doc.
Very much.
See
Thank
you
you.
next time. Take care.
Bye.
Oh, let's see if I can adjust this without causing troubles.
Hi, this is Charles.
Throw in a quick question here. On my iPhone, I seem to not be able to get a equivalent of a speaker view. I can only see like a 6-plex of faces. Is there something I'm missing here, or is that just how it is?
I don't know enough about WebEx to say, although I would think that on iPhone, there's going to be a space restriction.
I think that's all you can do. The pictures just like turn into postage stamps otherwise.
I'm on an iPad, and on that, there's a little dot in the upper right that lets you switch between grid mode and speaker dominant mode.
Yeah. But even in that case, the most you can see is 9.
You can sweep over and see more.
You can see more faces, but I'd like to be able to see like a single face at a time on the iPhone screen, because instead of 6 postage stamps.
Yeah, the best, your option on there is to click on that icon and get the, I guess, what's Apple's term, the marquee view or something like that? Where you get the big screen in the center and the strip of people on the bottom, but even that is
on the phone. I don't
like 4 or 5.
Okay, I don't see where that even is on the phone. That's okay.
Shall we move on to?
Something for another time.
Okay.
All right. I guess we'll just continue to switch between speakers. So does anyone want to start off with a question?
I have a very minor question, and that is, I was maybe a few minutes late logging on. Where is Chuck Joyner actually physically located?
Linda, you want to answer that one?
What time and where?
He's East Coast.
He's actually over in the, I believe, roughly the Philadelphia area.
Okay.
So he's working out of eastern or central Pennsylvania.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I got a question for everybody. Does anybody know anything about the Apple TV remotes? Mine seems to have died right after I had used my phone as the remote. It seems to have completely knocked off my hardware remote, the one with the little touchscreen.
Try to repair it.
I didn't see it. Well, the thing is, it won't even wake up. I'll try again to repair, but I have to. Yeah.
Did you check the batteries?
It's plug-in. You charge it. I've charged it the whole evening, and it still doesn't do anything.
Okay. Check around on the Apple support site. There is a reset command for the remote. You hold down a couple of extra buttons, and the remote itself will reset.
Okay, I'll double check it. Well, like I said, it was just happened before. We were trying to listen to. I was trying to show my wife something from my iPhone, and it was the only way to get to it was the Apple TV, even though we're sitting like a few minutes apart.
If it's an infrared remote, the camera on the front of an iPhone can see infrared. The camera on the back of the iPhone filters it out. So you can go into the camera, turn it to selfie mode, and point the infrared at it.
I'll try that, but it was working before, and the only thing I could think of is I actually used my iPhone as a remote, and then after that, this remote didn't work.
Like I would clarify, you're using this remote to control your Apple TV box.
The Apple TV, yeah,
Yes.
that was the only time, yeah.
And that is an
iPad or your iPhone.
That's a Bluetooth, yeah.
Yeah. It's conceivable that the Apple TV decided that it was supposed to pair only with your phone and that it may be ignoring the commands from the remote.
That's what I'll do.
That would be an Apple TV setting.
I'll go ahead and check that out. But it was just annoying. In fact, the funny thing about it is I grabbed my old remote that came with my Mac that doesn't even work with you, not even supposed to work with your Mac anymore. And I pointed it at the Apple TV, and it turned on the Apple TV, but it also went into my Mac and started playing my music, which is interesting.
Yeah,
which is what it used to do.
That gets to be an interesting thing on the thing because the Apple remote actually has 3 different setups. It'll do the infrared, although that's usually more for the television than anything else. It has the Bluetooth in there to actually get the pairing and linking done. But the commands themselves are actually sent over Wi-Fi.
Ah, well, again,
so once you actually link it up, you can take it to whatever room you like within your house.
I think it is Wi-Fi, but yeah, I'll double check everything after my wife goes to bed and I get work done with the television. But thanks for the ideas.
Okay, next question. Anybody?
Anybody? Okay. All right. Well, boring questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's more a request for encouragement, I think, than anything else. But the question is it safe to upgrade my MacBook Pro to Catalina now? Have I waited long enough to avoid this?
I can answer that.
Please.
So if you don't have any 32-bit applications, and there's an app out there that Dan Foy, I think he's on here, but I'm not sure. But anyway, Dan Foy recommended to me called Go 64, and it's a free app. And it's Go and the number 64. So do a search on that. Try that app, run it on your machine, and it will tell you if you have any apps that are problematic. And if you don't, then yeah, I think you're clear because I upgraded one laptop. You're welcome.
And, I was holding off in Catalina for a long time, and finally I upgraded my Parallels desktop to the latest version. Then I used the feature in it to clone my Mojave into a virtual machine, Mojave virtual machine, and then I upgraded to Catalina. And so now, anytime I want to run a 32 app, I just fire up the Mojave virtual machine, and Parallels desktop boots up very fast, and it doesn't by default it doesn't put the Mojave it doesn't put it down. It just puts it to sleep, so that starts instantly. And I don't have a lot of 32-bit apps, but that seems to work really well.
Yeah. I also waited a lot to switch to Catalina, and I do have an older Mac, 10 years old, that still runs the older 32-bit apps that I wanted to use. When you run a Go 64, you're probably going to see something that you have. Maybe you use it anymore, maybe you don't. But if you do have an older machine that runs it and you're maintaining that machine, is an alternative to having to do a virtual machine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And of course, come next week, the entire landscape may change. When Apple introduces, I'm guessing, macOS Coalinga.
Yeah.
So stay tuned on that. You may have a different opinion come after that.
Well, once they go to the their RISC processors and step away from microsquash or Intel, it'll be a whole new thing. In fact, that rumor really kiboshed me buying anything new until that happens.
Huh? Interesting.
Yeah. Other questions?
What platform is Apple going to use next week for all their remote meetings?
It's not iPhone, or it's not
No.
not Zoom.
Yeah. No, rumor is that Apple is actually putting the whole thing on a couple of hundred parallel processing server boxes. Although who makes it, I don't actually know.
Yeah.